Cool. So we are officially recording. Welcome to our 60th ever knowledge drop. Pretty big number. It feels pretty fun that we're already up in the 60s. It's crazy. And I'll just go through a couple housekeeping things before I pass it over to Erica. But basically, you all found the chat box already. Make sure it's set to all panelists and attendees. If you want to type any witty comments in there as we get going into the presentation today. And also on the Zoom webinar feature, you'll see a question and answer box. So hopefully we'll have at least 5 minutes or so at the end where you guys can ask Erica any questions about all these thoughts she has about being lost and ways to kind of work through that. But at any point, if you know you have a question, just put it in there and we'll try to get to those at the end. Lastly, this is getting recorded, so this will live on in the Knowledge Drop YouTube archive as long as the internet exists. So you can share this, send it around, watch it again after we're done with it today. But thanks again for being here, everybody that's joined in for today's Knowledge Drop. And most importantly, thanks to you, Erica, for wanting to drop this knowledge for the nation today. I think it's obviously very apropos for people that do something kind of crazy with their lives like remote year, because at some point it might feel a little bit like upside down in what's next, what's happening, where does life go from here. But I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Travis. Go ahead and share my screen here. And I do a little full screen. So I can't see the chat window anymore, so just let them just know that, guys. But a little bit about me. My name is Erica Brooks, and I'm part of Ikigai, the 6th remote year community, which was a 12-month program through Europe, Morocco, and Latin America. Started way back in August of 2016. And I'm an independent content designer, which is another fancy way of, oh, look at that. I can see the chat window. Thanks, Travis. It's a fancy way of saying I'm a freelance graphic designer. I'm based in Phoenix, Arizona, but I usually flee for like 1 to 3 months during the summer when it's sweltering hot and I need to satisfy my travel bug. So that's a bit about me. A couple months ago, I gave a Creative Mornings talk about the theme of Lost. And a little quick plug about Creative Mornings. If you're not familiar with them, look them up. You do inspirational talks all over the world, and they're super cool. So this isn't going to be so much a knowledge drop as it is an inspiration drop, but I think it's about a topic that is of interest to the remote year community on a couple of different levels. To get started, I want you all to find your the chat window in your Zoom room and get ready for a super quick little bit of participation. We're going to start our conversation today with a bit of a test. I want you all to think of what the opposite of lost is. The yang to lost's yin, you might say. And on the count of 3, you're all going to type that word into the chat window. So the one word that is associated with the opposite of lost. 1, 2, 3. The opposite of lost is, oh, yep, look at that. Oh, a different one, secure. That's cool. Well, I'm proposing a new one today. I don't think the opposite of lost is found. I think the opposite of lost is belonging. And we're going to explore that a little bit today through a couple of stories. It's going to set up the framework for our discussion. And 2 stories of times that I myself have been lost. The first comes from my college years, during which I spent a semester abroad in London. For spring break, a couple of my friends and I went to Italy on a bit of a whistle-stop tour of wine, gelato, architecture, lovely art museums, and now we did trains all over Italy, and this was our first time with train travel. We had no idea what we were doing, and so when we were going from Florence to Venice, we had to change trains in Bologna and had no idea. We only had 90 seconds, basically, to get off the train before the new passengers were filing on. So we were caught a little bit unawares. My friends, despite being a little unprepared, were able to dash to the end of the train car, grab their bags, get off the train. Meanwhile, I got a little delayed because the suitcase I'd stored above our seats got stuck. By the time I pulled it down and like fought my way up the aisle to all the passengers that were pushing their way onto the train car, the doors had closed and the train started pulling out of the station. So like banging on the window, trying to catch the attention of my friends who were like confused and then made eye contact with me on the train and suddenly frantic as the train started pulling out of the station to a destination that I had no idea. So this is before cell phones were ubiquitous, before a little blue dot on a tiny screen could tell you where exactly you were in this wide world. So I had no idea where I was, where I was headed, or any way of communicating with my friends. I was overwhelmed, scared, totally paralyzed, unable to process what I needed to do. So I basically just collapsed onto that damn suitcase and started to bawl. Obviously, there's a happy ending because I'm here in Phoenix. But at that time, I was totally, completely, physically lost. We're going to fast forward about a decade and a half to about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was senior level art director at a successful content marketing firm here in Phoenix. Loved what I did, the people that I worked with, and I'd been there for several years, progressed through the ranks, and was pretty confident I saw a place for myself there and opportunities for growth. One day, leadership took everyone aside and let us know that they were laying off about a third of the company, and thanks to a merger and acquisition. I was one of those people who lost my job, and for a time, I lost my direction as well. I looked around the Phoenix job market and I didn't see any opportunities where my skills, interests, and levels of expertise aligned, and I was basically existentially lost. Today, I run my own independent content design business, and while it took me a while to get here, I can now say I'm so incredibly satisfied with the way my career has evolved. I would not have taken that leap into the unknown of starting my own business if not for the opportunities provided by getting a little bit lost. So now I want to think, so this sets a framework for us to be thinking through being lost. There's being physically lost and metaphorically lost, maybe even a little existentially lost. We're going to start by thinking about being physically lost. And I want you all to think about a specific time that you have been lost. Maybe when you also have a foreign travel story of turning down maybe a dodgy street or transit mix-up. Maybe you were hiking and got off the path and couldn't find your way back. And I want you to think about, in that specific moment, what were those emotions that you felt? During our Creative Mornings talk, I had folks brainstorm the emotions associated with being physically lost. And these were the words that people started shouting out, just like one after another. And they're pretty heavy. I mean, hopeless, frustrated, confused, denial, conflicted, disconnected, nauseous. Like you even feel it in your body. And they're pretty heavy. So as we look at these words and we think about a time that we've been physically lost before, I want you all to take a deep breath, let it out. And we're going to think about some ways to get unlost, some tools, guides, resources that we look for in those moments of being physically lost. The kinds of things that you can do when you take a wrong turn, or when you're turned around on a trail, stuck on a Tuscan train bound for an unknown destination. What are these devices that you use, the people that you look for, maybe some of the routines that you might do? And again, during Creative Mornings, we brainstormed a bunch of these. And some of them are pretty standard map, pull up a GPS, ask an expert, or talk to a local. Some of them I thought were pretty creative and good reminders, like turn on the radio or order an Uber if you don't know where you are, how to get back to where you're going. So pretty helpful tools, and pretty easy for us to brainstorm what those are. So now let's go back and think about a time that we've been metaphorically lost. Maybe it's when you've had to make a decision, a tough decision in your life, and you don't know what that next step is going to be. Maybe it has to do with your career, or maybe how after graduation you didn't know what or you discovered you didn't want to go into what you got your degree in. Maybe there's a creative project where you don't know how to start or finish, or perhaps even your RY journey has concluded or is coming to, or is winding down, and you don't know where to go next. You've been there. So if you have a specific moment in mind, we're going to go back and look at these emotions that we thought of when being physically lost. And it's interesting that the same emotions that we associate with being physically lost are also the emotions that we tend to feel when we're feeling existentially lost or disconnected, depressed, anxious, worried about what the future holds. So these emotions, when we don't know where our little blue dot is pulsing on the map of the world, are also the same as when we don't know where to submit our resume or what to start typing in a blank page. So I have a bit of a theory, and it's completely unresearched, but hear me out. I think that as technology has gotten to a point where we can find out exactly where we are by simply pulling out that device that we carry with us at all times, when there are fewer moments in our lives when we have to use coping skills associated to navigate our way on our own, we've actually reached a point when we don't know how to process the sensation or those emotions that are associated with being lost or disconnected. We can simply speak a request into our phone and get a map showing our route with annotated landmarks, receive turn-by-turn audio instructions. The phone actually vibrates in your hand when it's time for you to take a turn. It can calculate commute times depending upon different times of day, show you real-time traffic information. And now the new Pixel phones have a whole like augmented reality thing, which is like basically like as soon as they come out with a smell-o-vision version of phones and directions, navigating is going to be full sensory, multi-dimensional experience. All that is to say that if the emotions that we feel when being metaphorically lost are indistinguishable from when we are physically lost, and if we're used to having navigation instructions immediately available, it can be even more paralyzing to try to figure out how to navigate the sensations and emotions of being lost in our lives, because we can't simply ask Google Maps to show us where we should apply for a new job. And Siri won't tell us what the first sentence of our next writing assignment should be. And if you ask Alexa what you should do with your life, she'll respond, I don't know that, because I've tried. So knowing the emotions associated with being physically lost and being metaphorically lost can be very similar. Let's look back at some of these tools and guides that were brainstormed when being physically lost. Of course, I'm not suggesting that if you're struggling with a career choice that you should just pull out a compass and see where it points, and that's where you should apply for a job. But I do think that leaning into metaphors can be helpful. Let's use this list as inspiration for thinking about tools, resources, routines, guides that can help us navigate that feeling of being metaphorically disoriented and unsure of where to start. For example, a road map shows you all different streets that you can take before you. A metaphorical way of thinking about a roadmap is to take a moment, look at the lay of the land, so to speak, and write down all of your options, all the different possible steps that you can take. Sometimes just looking at that list can help you see the many different options, or one comes clear. Or think of a North Star as a friend or a person, a symbol of person in your life. Someone who can help guide you. This person would be someone who's steady and bright, one of the first people that shows up in your life when everything else seems to get dark. In fact, as I brainstormed such metaphorical tools and guides myself, started noticing how many of these tools or guides could be metaphors for people in my life. Which starts leading us back to my assertion at the beginning that the opposite of lost is belonging. A couple of weeks ago, I watched a TED Talk by a scientist named Yuri Alon. He's a researcher and a professor at a university in Israel, and the whole talk is really, really great. Very relevant to our discussion today. And I wish I could just recite his whole thing, but that would be plagiarism, and we don't have time today. So I'm going to encourage you to take about 15 minutes and watch his talk in its entirety. I'll leave the link in the knowledge drop after this channel after this discussion. But I think what he talks about in there emphasizes the message that the moment you feel lost and are questioning where to go next, it's not only common and expected, it's an ironic sign that you're actually on the right path. He talks about lost as being in the cloud. And he says that the cloud stands guard at the boundary of the known and the unknown. Because in order to discover something truly new, at least one of your basic assumptions has to change. As a professor who guides students through their research, Yuri Alon tells his students about the cloud. Tells them that they should expect it, that they should embrace it, and that they should become what he calls members of the Cloud Appreciation Society. Yuri also talks about what he understands his own role to be when one of his students come to him and says, stressed, "Yuri, I'm in the cloud." First, he says that his response is, "Great, you must be feeling miserable." Yes, it's a bit of a joke, but Yuri himself has been in the cloud many times before. So he knows that at this specific moment, he needs to first acknowledge their emotions, and second, ramp up his support for the student at that time. He talks about how in psychology, research shows that when we feel fear or despair, our mind can shut down, our focus narrows to only conservative options, and we can be fearful of taking risks. Yuri says that if you'd like to explore the risky paths needed to get out of the cloud, you need other emotions like solidarity, support, and hope. And those come from your connection with somebody else. In other words, when you feel supported and cheered on by people like your North Star, those people can help you first take a step and then take a risk. That's why I think that the solution for feeling lost in our lives is to seek connection with people. Because when we feel a sense of belonging, we feel seen, validated, and supported enough to take the risks we need to grow. Now I want to wrap up here with a bit of a story, go back to my semester abroad in London. The lead professor for our study abroad program our very first assignment was to take the London Underground to a completely random destination. We were to get out of the tube station, wander around some streets, explore, and then get ourselves home again. But with a bit of a twist. Do all this without a map. As Professor Bogan was laying out his assignment for us, he told us with a gleam in our eye, he got like really excited. He was like, I want you all to go get a little lost in London. Basically, he was assigning us to go have a little level 3 fun. As I reflect back on that assignment, I think there are a couple of levels of value. First, Professor Bogan was encouraging us to get outside of our comfort zone a little, get off the beaten path, and see the real London. All very valuable stuff that we all appreciate as travelers and adventurers. And two, being tasked with getting lost, a little lost on purpose early during our stay in London, gave us a chance to work out a framework of how to navigate the city on our own. Way to figure out what our bearings were, take stock of what the tools that were available to us, maybe even work up the nerve to talk to somebody to help find our way around. And in doing all of this, instill in us a confidence that we could explore maybe a little bit further next time, and build a sense of security that we could always find our way home if we ever got lost, not on purpose. Regularly, he'd ask us who got lost recently, and he would get really excited to hear everybody's lost stories. So Professor Bogan was the first person I knew who celebrated getting lost. And Professor Yuri reminds us that getting lost not only means that we're on the bounds of discovering something new, but that these lost moments are times to call on our network for support. Being lost in the cloud can be paralyzing, but if we, one, recognize that it's normal and even expected, and two, value the growth and opportunity that come with going through the cloud, and three, seek resources and people to help us navigate the other side of the cloud, we'll get to a place where we know that we belong. And in the meantime, maybe we should get a little lost on purpose. And that's it, guys.
Yay! That was awesome. And yeah, here's all Erica's contact stuff. So she's obviously on Nation Slack. Are you cool if people reach out to you on Slack just in case they want to connect on this or other topics or whatever?
For sure.
Cool. Let's jump out of screen share. Go back to just our two little faces here. And we'll do some Q&A. We got some thank yous coming in. That's really nice. Thank you guys for being here as well. And like we were saying, this is probably pretty relevant to everybody that's done remote year at some point, either before, during, after remote year. It involves a lot of life changes and stuff. So it's a good way to think through it. I have a question that I'll just ask as we have time here. So say, in a really practical, there's a lot of this kind of looking down at this subject from above and a little more, like you said, inspiration job. If somebody, say they're going through a major life transition, they get fired, maybe they spend a week feeling that, thinking about it, and then at the end of that first weekend, Monday I'm going to wake up and do something to try to feel less lost. What are some things you would actually say you should do? You spoke a little bit about those North Stars and that kind of thing, but what are some actual things that you would do, say, this time around again if you got fired or something?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I did during the week after was a little bit ironic, was I got a bunch of really little mini notes. They were literally this big. And I started my day with writing thank yous to people at the company. It was, the kind of situation where it wasn't just me, we were going through it as a group. So I knew what my emotions were kind of magnified because everybody else around me was also processing those, whether those were people that were being let go or being having to stay. So personally, I tried amplifying some of those emotions of gratefulness and being thankful for the people that had been part of that journey with me, and it helped me transition, like refocus what those emotions were, rather than sitting and wallowing in that fear and the anxiousness and the totally unsteady moment that I was in. And they were real small, so I couldn't write a whole lot. So I would literally just write a person's name, and I did, I don't remember if it was like 5 a day or 5 a week or something like that. But I would just pick 5 people at work and just say, hey, I see you. I think it's been really great to work with you, or thank you so much for always being cheerful, or thank you for that work that you did with that client, or something like along those lines, like one sentence. And then I'd leave it on their desk or in their mailbox or something like that. And that just helped me, again, in that immediate moment. I don't think you necessarily need to have answers or start figuring out what that next direction is. I think you need to shift where your focus of emotions are. And once your emotions are steady, then you can look for answers.
That is great advice. Yeah, like, gratitude and thankfulness. Be gratitude and thankfulness, and get some positive momentum going. That's awesome. And I'll also just point out before we shut it down that we've never probably ever had 2 knowledge drops back to back that relate to each other so well. So if you guys are watching knowledge drops, or you're out there, in the future watching this video, the one before this by Helen is kind of about using kind of the emotions you want to feel to help you make decisions going forward. So it kind of relates to, if you're feeling lost, if you're not sure what decisions to make and how to sort of start the positive momentum going. She's got some great advice in her knowledge drop as well around how to make that happen. So thank you, Erica. Thanks everybody again for joining us today. Super wonderful knowledge drop, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with the next one.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ciao, y'all. Have a great Wednesday.